Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes, and I am back and very happy to be so. And while I was on vacation, I missed a shocking story that just broke right out into the open. Now, we knew some of the contours. I've been following it closely. But now we've got a whole host of damning new details about what may be the single most destructive institution in all of American politics. Of course, I'm talking about Fox News. Now, this Fox story is the rare kind of story where the truth turns out to be even more cartoonishly terrible than anything you could have possibly imagined from watching from the outside. This new information that comes from two recent filings in a defamation case against the network demonstrates in black and white what Fox is, 100% a propaganda outlet. They are engaged in bad faith, are at war with the truth that they know to be the truth. That final part's important, and we'll return to it. But to begin with, in these filings, Dominion Voting Systems, it's a company that makes voting machines used across the country, which Fox hosts and guests repeatedly claimed were part of a conspiracy to steal the 2020 election from Donald Trump, proves time and again that Fox knew that was all a lie. They knew the election was not rigged, but they also knew that Donald Trump wanted to say it was. They knew that his base, that their viewers wanted to hear that it was. And so they set about airing those known, obvious falsehoods in order to remain in Trump and the base's good graces and, crucially, to keep making money. And they waged war against anyone who dared to stand in their way. On multiple occasions, both Fox hosts and executives tried to get their own colleagues fired, turfed out for not towing the line of the big lie. In one instance, Tucker Carlson went so far as to demand the company fire a reporter, someone much lower on the pecking order than he, who had the temerity to just fact-check a tweet from Donald Trump mentioning Dominion voting machines. Outraged, he texted Sean Hannity, quote, "Please get her fired. Seriously, what the F? I'm actually shocked. It needs to stop immediately, like tonight." They took those complaints to executives, and by the next morning, the reporter had deleted her tweet. Her tweet, by the way, which was true. In another case, Fox Corporation chairman Rupert Murdoch, the guy at the very top, the guy who birthed this entire empire, called for the firing of a longtime executive and, we should note, loyalist Bill Salmon, who presided over the deeply unpopular Arizona call. You'll remember Fox was the first network to call the state of Arizona correctly for Joe Biden, which infuriated Trump and his supporters. Quoting again, Rupert suggested, quote, maybe best to let Bill go right away, which would be a big message with Trump people. And he was indeed fired that very same day, left at the altar as an offering for Donald Trump. Salmon himself put it best, quote, "It's remarkable how weak ratings make good journalists do bad things." Now, I gotta say, I'm not so sure about the good journalist part of that formulation, but they clearly did all sorts of bad things, above and beyond trying to get their colleagues fired for doing their jobs. The latest filing reveals that during Trump's campaign, Rupert Murdoch, get this, provided Trump's son-in-law, senior advisor Jared Kushner, with Fox confidential information about Biden's ads along with debate strategy. And after a meeting with Fox CEO Suzanne Scott and his son, Lachlan Murdoch, decided to allow wild claims on air. They actively chose to give a platform to the liars denying the election results. Now, I should note that Fox doesn't necessarily deny this stuff factually. They just say it doesn't amount to an actionable claim vis-a-vis defamation. That's not for me to say. But here's what I will tell you. Because people often will ask me, what's the difference? What's the difference between what you do and what they do, between what you do and what Fox does? And the answer is very simple. Because the difference is between good faith and bad faith. Because when I get here in this studio in front of this camera and tell you what I think, I believe what I am saying. I don't lie. I have a perspective, which you know, I don't hide. Sometimes I make mistakes, we make mistakes, we're all human. The difference is I will never look into this camera and lie to you, and I won't toe a line I don't believe in because I'm worried about the stock price. That is exactly what the hosts at Fox News did over and over. They knew the election was not rigged, that it was not stolen by the ghost of Hugo Chavez or weird Italian satellites or robotic AI voting machines, whatever. They fed their audience those lies anyway, and they are still doing it more than 2 years later. Just listen to Tucker Carlson less than 2 weeks ago.
There are so many unanswered questions, some of them lingering. How, for example, did senile hermit Joe Biden get 15 million more votes than his former boss, rock star crowd surfer Barack Obama? Results like that would seem to defy the laws of known physics and qualify instead as a miracle. Was the 2020 election a miracle? Honestly, we don't know. We don't expect to get an answer to it tonight.
Oh, look at that. Honestly, we don't know. Honestly, comma. Think he's being honest there? Honestly? So what is their motive in all of this? Well, they're terrified of losing viewers, and that means losing money and power and status and position. You know, in some ways, and this stuff was so remarkable to me, I almost came crawling back to the studio to do it. In some ways, the most revealing part of this story is the sheer abject patheticness of these people. Their cowardice, their groveling fear. A groveling fear that means they will do anything at all to keep their audience, to keep the money coming, to keep the power and prestige coming. Rupert Murdoch made it extremely clear when he explained why Fox continues to give a platform to Mike Lindell. That's the pillow dude, the election conspiracy theorist who founded the pillow company that still advertises all over the network. Quote, "It's not red or blue, it is green." Mike Lindell's money is worth more to Fox than the truth. On the evening of the insurrection, in a text to his producer, Tucker Carlson laid bare the other core fear at Fox. He wrote that Donald Trump is, quote, "a demonic force, a destroyer, but he's not going to destroy us." Now, a little context here. Important to remember who Tucker Carlson is. While he comes from an almost comically privileged background, he has washed out at multiple networks, had his show canceled, had to go back to doing weekend mornings on Fox. That was tough. He is clearly terrified of failing yet again, of washing out the third cable network, and apparently willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that doesn't happen. And we see this deeply pathetic fear when Mr. Brave Voice of the Everyman, stick it to the woke establishment, is arguing for the firing of his junior colleague, the reporter who fact-checked a Donald Trump tweet. And what is Tucker really worried about? Quote, "The stock price is down." Not a joke. Oh, the stock price. Mr. Brave Populist, Mr. Scourge of the establishment. I'll tell you something right now. I swear that I have never, ever in my entire life given a single second's thought to the Comcast stock price. And sure as hell have never sent a text about it or demanded the firing of a colleague because the truth they were spewing might lower that stock price. My God, how craven can you get? I can only speak for myself, but that's not why I do this. Not for the stock price. But as these filings make very clear, that is why Fox does what they do. And all these new details prove the people at Fox are following one of the most reliable recipes for truly destructive, dangerous, cruel behavior. And it's this. They've got a lot of power, but they're terrified of losing it. They think it might all go away. Their status is under threat. In fact, that's kind of the core of the reactionary mind to begin with. Now, while Fox has managed to keep a hold of their base, despite the challenges coming from new far-right networks like Newsmax and OAN, who at one point were even beating them on certain hours during this whole election aftermath, the Fox people know at some level they are following that base as much as leading. Donald Trump was a big obvious example of this when he ran for president the first time. Remember, Fox tried to knock him down. Good old Rupert Murdoch, clearly. But of course, it didn't work. Trump beat them. They all bent the knee. They tried again after he lost the 2020 election to tell their viewers a little bit with the Arizona call, it's over. He lost. And amazingly, amid Trump's third bid for the presidency, they still have not learned their lesson. It's 8 years, we're seeing the same dynamic play out. I don't know how much Fox you watch, how much of the Murdoch empire you're sampling, but they are really, really intent on finding a Trump alternative. They pump up any other 2024 possibility but Trump. At some level, it makes perfect sense. Really, who are they kidding? I mean, look at the people who run the network. Suzanne Scott, the CEO, the on-air talent like Tucker Carlson, Rupert Murdoch, his son Lachlan. Do you think their social networks consist of typical Fox viewers? Do you think these people spend their time hanging out in like rural red America? Working class folks who live in places like East Palestine, Ohio? Are those the kinds of people joining them at their country clubs or hanging out with them in their Super Bowl boxes? Of course not. They are totally out of touch with these people, the people that watch their network. And at some level, they know that, and it stalks them, haunts them, always worried that too much distance will grow up between them in their multi-million-dollar castles and the viewers out there in the countryside. And so here they are once again, about to go through the same song and dance. The Murdoch empire clearly putting its thumb on the scale for Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, potential Republican nominee, who so far does seem to have the best shot at beating Trump. So there was this recent fawning New York Post profile that infuriated the ex-president. Over on the Fox Nation streaming channel, we saw a whole special devoted to former Republican presidential candidate Jeb Bush praising DeSantis.
There are people in public life that are kind of check-the-box politicians, and then there are others that want to serve, and Governor DeSantis is one of those. When the storm, when Ian hit, it's devastating. I mean, it's wiped out Southwest Florida. They're looking for someone to give them hope that things are going to get better. The fact that he could announce that, for example, the bridge to Sanibel Island could be built in a record time and open within 10 days, I think, is pretty remarkable.
Is this Ron DeSantis' opportunity to run for higher office?
I think it is. He's been a really effective governor. Who better to do it than someone who's been outside of Washington, who's governed effectively, who I think has shown that Florida could be a model for the future of our country.
Just to be clear, what I just aired you isn't a campaign ad. That was on the Fox streaming service. It's just like, whoa, here's an interview with Jeb Bush about Ron DeSantis. It's very obvious what they're doing, right? Then there was this morning's episode of Fox and Friends, one of those episodes where they go out and they eat breakfast with their viewers. Now, this really sums up my entire argument just so perfectly. Please watch as Brian Kilmeade seems desperate to find someone backing Ron DeSantis for president in a Florida diner.
All right, Lawrence. First off, Metro Diner here. I got a question for you. Ready? All right. 2024. Who's pumped up for the election? All right. Rapid fire. Who's your man? Who's your woman?
My man, Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. Christie, no. Christie, no.
Who's your man?
Donald Trump.
Or woman?
I'd say Trump.
Trump. A lot of Trump fans.
Trump and Nikki Haley.
And Nikki Haley.
Donald Trump and Nikki Haley.
All right, so far a lot of Donald Trump. I see Governor DeSantis. What about President DeSantis?
I like it. I like it.
Who's your pick?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. Trump or DeSantis? I'm either or.
So you're right in the middle.
Yes, I am.
What you pumped up for?
I am super pumped.
I feel like we need a little bit of a break from election to election.
I don't know. Maybe if I go to the woman in the DeSantis shirt, she'll say DeSantis, and then she equivocates. Poor guy. That's a tough assignment Brian Kilmeade had there. Well, anyway, Rupert Murdoch, you built this, buddy. You made this. We've all been suffering the consequences. Fox News helped to form this base for decades. They've certainly helped form modern American conservatism in all of its present reality. But they also do not control it. And they know that. And that central fact on display in the Dominion filings, that central fact is at the root of just what is so destructive and dangerous about our politics right now.